Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today on really a historic day, because just a few hours ago, the Los Angeles City Council enacted an ordinance that, as in so many other things, will lead the nation in environmental standards, lead the nation in changing our practices around an environmental crisis that affects not just Los Angeles, but the rest of the country and, in fact, the entire world. Because we have now become the biggest city in America to adopt an ordinance that will significantly reduce waste around food services items. Now, what does this deal with? Well, I'm sure everybody at home has a drawer full of these. So these are what some of us are now referring to not as single-use plastics, but no-use plastics, because these are inserted into the bag of food that gets delivered to our house or that we pick up from the to-go or from the drive-through window, and they go home with us, where we eat with our own utensils and use our own napkins and use our own salt and pepper, and these things just go into a drawer someplace. And if that weren't bad enough, these packages get delivered to us. Not only are they plastic utensils, but they're wrapped in plastic for the convenience of the person to take it out of the bin and drop it into our bag. It's a ludicrous waste of resources that is destroying our planet, not just in terms of the litter that it produces, that fouls our streets, our inland waterways, the Los Angeles River, the ocean, but also because of what's used to make these resources. You know, we are using precious resources to manufacture things that never get used and then end up in a landfill for centuries. It's just nuts. So I'm very, very pleased to be able to be standing here with two of my colleagues who are environmental champions without parallel in Los Angeles. Councilmember Paul Koretz and Councilmember Mitchell O'Farrell, who is the chair of our Environment Committee. And I'm so pleased to be able to celebrate this moment with both of them for this collaborative effort at creating this important ordinance, which will be, I think, a role model for the rest of the country to follow. And I'm very pleased also to be joined by so many of the advocacy organizations that will be speaking in a moment, as well as a restaurateur who will talk about how this benefits not only our environment, not only our neighborhoods, but also our restaurants as well. It helps us not only environmentally, but economically as well. So I'm delighted to be able to celebrate today, and many of the folks who will speak will talk to you about the statistics that relate to single-use plastics and what a gargantuan problem it is that so many single-use plastic items are just discarded and they continue to accrue and accrue. And I think, you know, it's important also to keep that in a context, because this is not just a matter of economy and the environment, it's also a matter of equity, because almost none of this plastic gets recycled. Only about 10% of the plastic that's ever been created in history has been recycled. The rest of it will continue to be in our environment for literally centuries. And that problem has only gotten worse now that the U.S. has denied the opportunity to ship its used plastic elsewhere, because that's been our practice. Just send it to the third world, out of sight, out of mind. We say that it's recyclable, but it's not. Recycling is a fraud that the oil company has foisted upon us for far too long. So it's no longer reduce, reuse, recycle. It just has to be reduce and reuse now. And let's just forget about recycling altogether, because this is not recyclable. And it just goes and builds up in our oceans, builds up in the third world, and never, ever gets into a recycling plant. So with that, I'm pleased to be able to celebrate this moment with my colleagues on the ordinance, and I'd like to first invite up to speak really somebody who has been a champion on waste reduction, certainly our leading champion on fighting climate change, and make no mistake about it, this is also very much a climate change issue. And also who has led the fight against plastics generally, and particularly about styrofoam. And I was very pleased to hear in the Mayor's State of the City address his support of a citywide ban on styrofoam, which Councilmember Paul Koretz has been fighting for as long as I have known him. So it's a pleasure to introduce Councilmember Paul Koretz.
Well, thank you, Paul. And see this? This is a little bit of my plastic junk drawer. This is what we call zero-use plastics. For the last year or so, many of us have been ordering takeout and eating mainly at home, which means this stuff never gets used. It goes into a drawer, or it goes straight into the trash, where it ends up at a landfill. This is not even recyclable at all. None of this stuff ever gets recycled. It is the very definition of waste, and it's got to stop. One of the few benefits of COVID was that people working from home for a short while reduced traffic and reduced climate pollution and air pollution. But on the flip side, we dramatically increased our use of plastics. And little single-use packets and bags and food containers that really were zero use, which is essentially the direction the plastic industry wants us to go in. In fact, to hedge against a very necessary and very dramatic global reduction in oil and gas to combat climate change, the fossil fuel and petrochemical industries are pouring billions of dollars into building new plastics plants to make tens of millions more of tons of plastic just like this. Which, if you understand how desperate our climate situation is becoming, it's the very definition of insanity. As we speak, one of the strongest and fastest growing typhoons on record, Typhoon Surigay, is devastating the Philippines. Scientists are attributing its rapid growth and speed to climate exacerbation, which, while here in California, as we face our rapidly worsening climate exacerbated drought, we're actually ironically hoping that this typhoon might shove a little precipitation our way. The path the plastics industry is on is leading us towards climate destruction and a plasticized planet. We need to blaze a new trail with more thoughtful, forward-thinking habits. And today's foodware upon request ordinance is a common sense measure intended to save restaurants money by reducing the amount of stuff that comes home with our food deliveries or pickups, including utensils, napkins, condiments, straws, and the like. This doesn't include anything that's part of the recipe, like a salad dressing. Consumers have to click the box or ask if they actually want this stuff. If they don't click the box, they don't get it. Most people don't want it, but this way it's easy, it's basic, and it's a win-win, saving money for the restaurants and saving our planet at the same time. Before I finish, I want to thank our committee chair, Councilmember O'Farrell, for leading the way with his straws on demand and for prioritizing this ordinance in committee. I want to thank my co-author, Councilmember Paul Krikorian, and his staffer, Aaron Ordauer, Councilmember Bob Blumenfield for an early sister effort, our city attorneys, Adina Hopenstand and Steve Martin, our sanitation staff, Jennifer Pinkerton and Alex Hayu, and our CLA, Rafael Prieto, my staffer, Andy Schrader, and especially all of the advocates with the Reusable LA Coalition, who all worked so hard to help make this happen in time for Earth Day. Excellent work, everybody, and thank you for getting us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Do you want to take all these back with you for your drawer, or should I give them to Enrique? I'll give these to Enrique, and he can handle.
I think you can just hand it to him on the way to the landing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kretz. I'm so pleased also to be joined by the chair of the Energy, Environmental Justice, and Climate Change Committee. Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell, long before he was a council member, was fighting for our environment and was especially known for his championship of the Los Angeles River. And he is Mr. River in the City Council. And these sorts of contaminants, these single-use items, if you ever take a kayak trip through the LA River, you'll see these things everywhere you look. And once they go in the river, they're going to end up in the ocean as well. So I'm so pleased that Councilmember O'Farrell, first of all, led the way for all of this by courageously stepping forward and enacting an effective ban on plastic straws. This was an ordinance that made sense for the industry again, made sense for the environment, made sense for consumers, because it was well thought through with the kind of policy making that Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell has become so known for in our council. And when this cause came to the committee, he brought equal fervor and equal thought to it. It's a great pleasure to introduce one of our tremendous environmental champions, Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Krikorian. And Mr. Kretz, it's good to see you in person for the first time in 13 months. So, Mr. Krikorian just mentioned the LA River. I live near the LA River. I was on the bed of the LA River last week. I'm at the LA River frequently. Now, about 7.5 years ago, we enacted the plastic bag ban. And if you frequent the LA River the way I do, you've seen in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the complete reduction of plastic bags that used to the river was full of them. No more. So we know that reducing plastic waste has an effect. What you will see at the river right now is where the cement meets the sand, you will see plastic straws that are still embedded into the sand, just like all of these are as well. And I'm sorry, fellas, I don't have anything to add. I should have cleared out my drawer upstairs because I could have brought it all right here. But this kind of tells the story, doesn't it? So I just couldn't be more proud to be here to support my two amazing colleagues who are environmental champions in their own right and have been throughout their entire legislative career, stemming from their work at the state level. This is a huge step forward on our journey to being truly 100% sustainable and carbon-free. The committee and the entire council have acted boldly and aggressively on policies like LA 100 to get Los Angeles to 100% carbon-free by 2035. Now, to achieve this goal, and I know we can, we must do so together. People care deeply about our environment and will make informed choices based on the environmental harm caused by single-use foodware items. So this is not a punitive approach where we're trying to exact fines from folks. We know that people will make great choices on our environment when informed to do so. And upon request is the way to do this, because every interaction will be an education. We want to help small businesses as well. My friend Chris Jones, who has Chicken and Chips in Atwater Village, who's going to speak in a moment, opened his restaurant during the pandemic. Folks, small businesses and restaurants need our help. They spend billions and billions of dollars a year on things like this, and you just heard about what happens to these, so it's a complete waste, and it'll save our sole proprietors and entrepreneurs like Chris money to run his business. I am very proud to be with all of you today because I know that we are working toward a future without single-use plastics, powered by clean energy and thoughtful, sustainable practices, and environmentally sustainable and restorative choices we can make as consumers, restorative to the environment, whether we're purchasing a delicious takeout meal from our favorite restaurant like Chicken and Chips, or buying a piece of furniture or an item of clothing, or going to the nursery and buying native milkweed for the monarch butterfly. This is a great awareness that we're all part of now. We're at that point in the environment, in world history, and that moment is now that we have to really think about our choices that we make as consumers at every level, in every sector of government. So I couldn't be more proud to be standing with these incredible individuals up here today announcing this really, I think it's one of the most innovative ordinances for our environment from any city anywhere in the United States, and we know that people are going to watch, and I will be watching the immediate visual effects on the Los Angeles River because that is my barometer. So I think I'll be seeing a lot less of this at the river. So thank you, Mr. Krikorian, Mr. Koretz, for your leadership on this incredible new ordinance. Couldn't be more proud to stand with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember O'Farrell. Next, somebody has to implement all of this. You know, the council comes up with good policy, and then somebody has to actually turn that policy into action. And I'm very pleased that in this city, we have a Bureau of Sanitation and the Environment that's committed to taking the most progressive steps possible to try to make sustainable changes that benefit our environment. And so it's a great pleasure now to be able to introduce the General Manager of the Bureau of Sanitation, Enrique Saldivar.
Thank you, Councilmember Krikorian and Councilmember Koretz, Councilmember O'Farrell. I see how this works. You know, as I was listening to your remarks, all three of you, recounting how many great accomplishments we have had in the past, you just figured, well, this department is well practiced at doing these kinds of things. Let's give them yet another program to implement. So it's, I see. We have been thrilled by your leadership on this. And in the last year, many of us, as the council members already alluded to, have turned to takeout or delivery to still enjoy our local restaurants. But most takeout and delivery meals are eaten at places like our home, our workplace, where we already have utensils and condiments. This means that the forks, the knives, and other plastics, you saw plenty of them, will end up either in the landfill or, unfortunately, in even worse places, our storm drain system, our water bodies, or just our neighborhoods, on the streets. These small utensils cause a big problem, of course. They are so small, difficult to recycle, and in many cases, impossible to recycle just because of the material that they're made of. So and in some cases, leach toxic pollutants depending on what's in the plastic mix. And they break into small pieces. You'll hear a lot about that from Shelley. The best way to deal with waste like this is directly at the source, meaning let's not generate it in the first place. So, simple policy approach, but very effective. As the city's lead environmental agency, LASAN will work with the City Council, our partner agencies, and the residents at large to bring out a robust education program between now and January 1st, which is when the ordinance is going to be taking effect, the first phase of the ordinance, and then for large restaurants, and then smaller restaurants a year from approval of the ordinance. So between now and then, much as we did with the single-use plastic bags, much in the same way as we did with the plastic straws or straws on request, we know that we can count on the goodwill of city residents and the businesses to adopt this system, to adopt this new ordinance. Now, Councilmember Krikorian expected me to have a whole bunch of statistics, and we got plenty of those, but I brought something better for him and the other council members. A bit of a surprise, but something that's very important for them, has been very important for them for some time. Now, There's the official way of being able to ban plastics. That goes through a whole legislative process. And then there's the practical, operational way in which we have to recognize that some of these plastics are simply problem plastics, as we call them. Here you have, if you can even see it, the 7 types of plastics that are in our market universe, 1 through 7. And over time, some of them have just become outright problem plastics. No market, no recyclability, no reuse, everything bad about them. So, effective immediately, as an operational measure, we're going to exclude them from our blue bin. Meaning that we're going to ask residents to not any longer place them in the blue bin. I knew you would be happy, Councilmember Krikorian. So that is to complement the leadership action that the council is taking with the plastics utensils upon request. We will do our part as well. So that is going to go into effect immediately. We will similarly do an education system. Of course, the residents will not simply know what to do and not to do, so we will go through an education. But effective immediately, that'll be our operational policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Enrique. And Mr. Kretz needs to get to a committee. Thank you very much, Mr. Kretz. So I just want to put that comment into a little bit of context, because when you see those chasing arrows, when people see those symbols, they think, oh good, I'm relieved of responsibility. All I need to do is take this piece of plastic and put it in my blue bin, and Enrique Saldivar will take care of it for me. And it will get recycled, and it will become a park bench, and it will live a new life. And so I can go to Trader Joe's and buy as much plastic-wrapped, plastic container groceries as I want, and I never need to worry about it. And all of that is nonsense, because only a few kinds of plastic are recyclable for all practical purposes at all. And even those are often made non-recyclable by adding stickers and other things that make it virtually impossible to do. And even the ones that are often not recycled or not used by the industry because it's not economic for them to do so. They just use virgin plastic because it's cheaper. So that's why ordinances about reducing use matter so much, because consumers need to understand that unless we reduce use in the first place, we cannot recycle our way out of the mountain of plastic contamination that's influencing our global environment now. By 2050, there will be more plastics in the ocean than there is fish by volume. So that's why this is important. And Enrique, you took my notes. I got to keep us on. I got to try to keep us on schedule here. So there we go. There we go. Thank you. Okay, and that's actually a great segue, because our next speaker is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Heal the Bay, Shelley Luce. As everybody, I think, knows, Heal the Bay is one of California's and perhaps the nation's leading advocacy organizations protecting our ocean environment, stopping litter and other kinds of contamination. I've worked with Heal the Bay now for 15 years or so on this specific issue of plastics reduction and how it affects the ocean. And so I'm delighted to be able to introduce one of the great champions of this initiative, Shelley Luce.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Krikorian, and thank you to Council Members O'Farrell and Councilmember Koretz. This is a really exciting day, and I so appreciate being here. I'm representing Heal the Bay, as well as Reusable LA, which is a coalition that has come together to support ordinances like this one to move away from single-use and zero-use plastics. And it includes some core members that I want to mention. They are Azul, Five Gyres, the Bay Foundation, the Surfrider Foundation, Algalita Foundation, Upstream, and numerous LA neighborhood councils. A lot of people support this, and I also want to thank the many members of the public who made their voices heard through Reusable LA or on their own. Thousands of Angelinos signed petitions to support this specific measure. Hundreds of people took the time to write a letter or write an email to the City Council to let them know that they support having a choice in whether they receive this kind of trash with their takeout food. So today, LA City Council said yes to letting us decide if we want to have plastic utensils included with our takeout food, which is really important because, as a council member said, plastics end up in our oceans, they rarely get recycled, and they stick around forever. Heal the Bay has picked up at least 2 million individual pieces of plastic from LA beaches alone. That means plastic that was dropped somewhere in the city of LA or blew out of a trash can, came down a storm drain or a river. Small portion of that gets washed back up on our beaches, where we and thousands of volunteers go out and pick them up and throw them in the trash. So there is no end to this if we keep producing stuff like this. So it's a yes from the city today to letting us choose. It's also a great big no to the plastic industry, the oil industry, because that's where this toxic trash comes from. That's who makes money polluting our bodies, our communities, our rivers and oceans with this toxic trash, which is harmful to our communities from the beginning of its life, when it's drilled out of the ground as oil, to the end of its life, which may be in our ocean, in a landfill. It actually lasts forever. So I'm really happy to be part of saying no to that toxic industry as well. Thank you again to our council members for being leaders and champions on this issue. We are going to work with you for whatever comes next in saying no to plastic trash in Los Angeles. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Shelley. And you know, the Reusable LA Coalition is not going out of business after today because this city council is continuing to work on a number of plastics initiatives and waste initiatives and a comprehensive plastic waste policy that will be coming soon. So there's a lot more work to be done, but this is an important first start. I want to also welcome and thank for her extraordinary advocacy as a member of this coalition, Andrea Leon Grossman, who is the Climate Action Director with Azul. Azul brings together our environmental advocacy and our environmental justice concerns, and this really is, if there's ever an environmental justice issue, it's toxic plastic contamination of our neighborhoods and our inland waterways. And so I'm really pleased to be able to recognize Andrea Leon Grossman.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. My name is Andrea Leon Grossman. I'm with Azul, I'm the Climate Action Director. And I would like to thank the council members today, especially my own council member, Councilmember Koretz, and all the organizations involved in this coalition, especially our partners at Heal the Bay. I just have one thing to say about this. This is environmental racism. This is hurting our neighbors right here in Los Angeles. This is killing people. Los Angeles is the biggest urban oil field in the nation. We have extraction right here. And it kills people where it's extracted. It kills people where we have refineries. It kills people where it's marketed. If you go to 99-cent stores, that's where our people live. Mi gente vive junto a las tiendas de 99 centavos. And it's marketed as a cheap stuff that people can afford. And we cannot afford to get sick. Then it ends up next to a landfill or an incinerator. And that's where people of color live. That's why this is a racism issue. And we can no longer afford to have this in our neighborhood. We cannot afford this anywhere near us. It leaches into our body, and then it leaches into our oceans, into our waterways. It leaches everywhere. We're breathing this, and we are drinking it, and it's everywhere. So today is a day to start celebrating because it's a day that we have a step in the right direction, and it's a beginning. And I am really hopeful that this body, this city council, is going to keep on going, because this is the beginning of the end for this plastic industry, these mercenaries who are just attacking my community. And as an immigrant, I live within 1 mile of an oil well, and I am lucky, because there's many who have way many wells next to them. So again, I commend this city council on passing this ordinance, and I look forward to one day having all reusable utensils and serveware and everything, because that's what we deserve. We deserve an economy that is regenerative, and it serves every single member of this community. That's what we deserve. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrea. This is, oh, sorry. I mentioned that this is an issue that affects neighborhoods across Los Angeles. And our neighborhood councils that represent every single community in Los Angeles have created a Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, which unites 62 member neighborhoods throughout the city. And they have been relentless advocates for this city council to take more assertive action to ensure that every one of those neighborhoods is kept clean, free from contamination, free from the kind of environmental racism that Andrea just mentioned. And so I'm very pleased to introduce Lisa Hart, who's been instrumental in advancing this ordinance forward and is on the steering board of the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. Lisa?
Hi, and thank you. So many people in our neighborhood councils are really, really excited about this motion. It turns out that a lot of us are bothered by all the unwanted, unused stuff. And people in neighborhood councils have also been talking to restaurants. And it turns out, as we'll hear more about, restaurant owners are really excited about this. This saves them money, and they want to do the right thing. And this frees them from the expectation to produce the stuff that they know people are not going to use. We have to think more about where stuff comes from, how it's made, where it ends up, and who ends up paying for that. This effort is good for the climate, it's good for our water, it's good for the air we breathe, it's good for our bodies, and it's good for our communities. And so I want to thank so many people within and outside of the Reusable LA Coalition who made this happen, in particular Council Members O'Farrell, Krikorian, and Koretz. And Andy Schrader from Koretz's office has done so much for this, and he introduced us to Aaron. So it's a wonderful effort working on this with everybody, and we look forward to working on more comprehensive legislation, as was mentioned, and happy Earth Day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And now, last but certainly not least, we want to bring this full circle to from the environmental aspects of this to the economic aspects of this. And as Councilmember O'Farrell mentioned, who has been one of our leading champions of the restaurant industry in this city, our restaurants are struggling right now, particularly small businesses, you know, entrepreneurial restaurants that are trying to start up in this very difficult environment. And things are not made easier for them when they have to bear the cost of items that are utterly unnecessary. So it's been a pleasure to be able to work with the restaurant industry to come up with an ordinance that makes sense both for our environment and the industry. And as the representative of all of the restaurants in Los Angeles, so this is a big task. I want to invite up Chris Jones, who is the owner and founder of Chicken and Chips in Atwater Village. And as Mr. O'Farrell mentioned, Chris opened this business at the very beginning of the pandemic, so an unbelievable challenge that he's met, but he's continued to be a champion of the environment as well as a successful entrepreneur who's helping to build up his community. So it's a pleasure to introduce Chris Jones.
Thank you for the introduction, Councilmember Krikorian. I'd like to also thank Councilman Mitch O'Farrell for this opportunity, and also Kevin Burke for this opportunity to speak. We opened our restaurant in January of 2020, right before the pandemic. And as a new restaurant, managing these unprecedented challenges was not easy. We've had to be particularly cost conscious. And as we think about ways we can help restaurants recover, reducing the amount spent on foodware accessories is one such way, especially after so many restaurants have increased their spending on these items for takeaway during the pandemic. Upon opening our restaurant, we decided to purchase foodware items that are recyclable and biodegradable. So we knew that we didn't want to use these from the start. I actually live in Atwater Village, where our restaurant is located, and I run along the river almost every day. And so I see the results of this plastic, of straws, and of trash along the river. And you know, sometimes I'm running and I want to stop and just pick up all the trash because it's so much. And so it's very emotional for me because I live in that area and our restaurant is in that area. So I understand, and I thank for this. I'm so happy for this initiative. It's very important. Our business spends about $30,000 to $50,000 on foodware accessories annually. So I support this initiative extremely. This foodware accessories on request ordinance is so helpful, and it will help us save so much money and reinvest elsewhere in our restaurant. That could mean hiring a local community or a local company to get our recyclables from. By reducing the number of foodware accessories that we purchase, we can probably save up to $15,000 to $20,000 a year. So it's very important. In addition to our bottom line, as an LA River adjacent restaurant, we also understand the impact of plastic waste on our waterways and on our streets, which is why we have begun hosting regularly cleanups every week, or every weekend, I should say, on Saturdays from 9 to 11. We are a community-based serving restaurant, or serving business, I should say. And that means being environmentally friendly and a steward of the environment. Our small restaurant is not the only restaurant that's going to change this paradigm. All restaurants must take part in this. Small restaurants, family restaurants, corporate restaurants, and non-corporate restaurants. It's not going to just take us. It's going to take everyone as a whole. I was talking to Councilman Mitch O'Farrell the other day when he came to support our cleanup, and you know, when you see a piece of trash on the floor or plastic, of course we're not going to clean up LA all in one shot. It's not going to happen overnight. But if we start small and just start by just one of us just picking up a piece of trash, picking up plastic, and this initiative, even restaurants, you know, not giving out plasticware, it will help change the whole over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen over time. So I think this is an amazing initiative. Thank you for this. It's so important. And thank you for this opportunity to speak. And we are going to definitely support this action. And hopefully all small businesses will be a part of this. I thank you for this opportunity, and I hope to see you guys at Chicken and Chips for the best chicken sandwich in LA. All right, peace.